And we are live! Welcome! No, I did the accent. I didn't know how to do the accent. Welcome to Ironhome, a stream where I do Iron Sword and things. Tonight we have a very special episode and a very special guest. So please welcome Margot Hutton. Is that how I pronounce your last name? Hutton? Okay. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be able to chat with you tonight.
Yeah, me too. We had like a pre-chat last week and it was lots of fun. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about tonight. So I was thinking that, well, just in case no one's read the YouTube description, because everyone does that, but just in case someone hasn't done that, Margot here will be telling us about her book, which she wrote based on an Iron Sword game. That is correct, right?
Yes.
Excellent. So I thought that first maybe we could start with talking a little bit about Iron Sword itself, how we got into it and other questions and so forth. So do you want to go first, how you got into Iron Sword?
Sure. Last year I found my forever role-playing group, and it was so much fun that in the times between games when we would have like 3 weeks off, I would just have this role-playing itch. And so my fiance Matt introduced me to Ironsworn, and originally we were going to play it co-op. But once I discovered the joy of playing solo, just took off from there. And it was really nice because as a writer, I was able to go as deep narratively as I wanted. I'm very much more into a narrative-driven game as opposed to Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like a lot of people are there for making the cool character with the cool sheet and using numbers to do cool things, and sometimes the narrative gets pushed to the back.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. I mean, it's funny that you were gonna play it co-op and then you're like, no, I'm gonna do this alone. You just back off.
Well, I think part of it was really just more of playing solo is nice because you have 30 minutes and you just sit down and play. And whereas, you don't have to worry about scheduling it with another person and putting aside enough time to really do a good session and make it, worth putting aside the time in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I personally do not understand the people that are able to let me just play solo for 5 minutes here and 10 minutes here and 50 minutes. I cannot do that. I am ritualistic. I need to set aside the time, the space, the everything. Everything's a preparation. But it's possibly because I've got 2 small children. So anything really has to be done in that way.
That makes sense. I mean, I noticed you are extremely organized. I was like, the children might have something to do with that. You either become a frazzled parent or a everything set out parent.
All right, so I got into Ironsworn by basically jumping around different systems here and there and trying to, I was recommended to me by the Mud and Blood community, the Mud and Blood podcast, where I was, seeing different grim, dark kind of games, and I came across it and I tried it out, and it blew my mind. It was different to every other game I have ever played, and I guess we're gonna go into that. I'd like to tell anyone that's watching, I see we have 5,000 people watching us. Well, if anyone wants to ask a question, feel free to send in the chat, and we'll see if we will answer it or we'll just ignore you. So, question number 2. Much in the same way that Margot ignored her fiance and decided to play solo. So, question number 2. Why do
he's the GM of my forever group.
Why do we love Ironsworn? Why is it so special? Why did it blow our minds? So, Why do you love Ironsworn, Margot?
Again, it's that narrative first play. Um, I I'm really into more Powered by the Apocalypse games because they're simple. They don't. The idea of sitting down and reading an entire D&D manual, or what was the other one I played in college? Vampire the Masquerade. The idea of having to sit down and read the whole manual just was too much for me. And Ironsworn is simple, it's straightforward. You can play off of the downloadable cheat sheets, and that gave me the accessibility to then take the story and just go wherever I wanted with it. And it's set up in that make your own world, having the choosing your truths, and mixing and matching how you want to play, and that being so not just encouraged but set up from the very beginning to encourage that narrative first play.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree that the improvisational factor was one that blew my mind.
Yeah.
I used to have. We were talking about this with a friend the other day, that I could simply. He would notice that I did not enjoy our games. You know, everyone would enjoy the games, but I would leave thinking, how can I make this better? How can I improve? It was just like full-on anxiety for me. I had to prepare for every possibility. Everything had to be accounted for, you know. And then I sat down and I tried out Ironsworn, and it was like, this is amazing. I don't have to prepare a single second. We start playing, and then we stop, and I don't have to think about this for a whole week until we sit down and actually play again. And that is amazing. The ability to just, you know, not prepare anything and not feel the pressure of prep, you know, the pressure of having to prepare all this content, you know.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I see how much. Like I said, my fiance is the DM of the Forever Group, and I see how much work goes into being, leading and creating that whole world and everything. And he loves it. I would hate it.
Excellent, excellent. All right, you touched a little bit on this question, but why do you think playing solo is special?
Yes. So again, it is that getting to do it whenever I want to do it, but also it is that feeling of having full control over the decisions. And you mentioned that when we chatted before. And I guess it's that give and take, where it can be fun to have a game where it is very collaborative, and it is a collection of what everybody wants. And then it's nice and freeing just to be like, nope, we're doing what I want to do. And being able to, I guess for me, playing solo is very, very adjacent to creative writing. It's just creative writing with dice.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I talked about this a while back when I was saying, when I realized that, it was at one point where I was talking about the benefit of playing GM-less is both that you're not only a GM in the sense that you have to decide everything and you have to prepare and everything, but you also you're doing that, but you also get to experience the story. And you're not just a player that has no control over the narrative. You are a player that also has some control over the narrative. I tend to not enjoy being a player unless I'm very, very, very in sync with the GM, because otherwise, the moment I propose something and the GM says no, that can't, you know, that's not a thing, I immediately, boom, I fall down and I realize, oh, that's right, we're playing a game. There are limits in this. That, you know, there's a fourth wall. There's like a, you know, the stage is set, everything, and and we can't leave that area, and you know, and it immediately begins to feel like a video game. It immediately begins to feel, oh, I'm limited in the options I have because the GM didn't prepare this, or the GM doesn't want to improvise, or the GM, anything like that happens. And then I immediately I feel constrained, versus when I'm playing solo or co-op as well, in the sense that I have the freedom to do anything. There's no constraints. Yeah. Everything's improvised. Everything's amazing. And like you said, this is obviously more about talking GM-less, but in the sense of solo, I think it's great that, like you said, sometimes you want to do your own thing. The input from other people is great, but sometimes you have this one story in your head that is just the one you want to tell and the one you want to experience, because it's not the same thing. A lot of people, this is something that keeps popping up everywhere, where people are like, oh yeah, you know, playing solo is just, it's writing. It's writing. It's like, yes, but no. It's also playing. I am playing a game. I'm not just making up a story. I'm living part of it, but I just have control.
Yeah, exactly. And it, you know, when you're creative writing, just in general, you have not just like it is literally limitless possibilities. It's as much as you can think of. Whereas playing solo is adjacent to that, not the same to that, because you're allowing the dice to decide which options it's going to cut away. So you have this story to tell, and the dice get to control somewhat how you tell it and where it goes. And I think that is just, as a writer, that is just so much fun.
I agree. We have a question from Benjamin Brown. Do you think system is a bar to narrative in some cases, and or do you think less complex systems are more conducive to more full-blooded narrative? What do you think, Margot?
It depends a lot on the person, because I can't sit here and say that, oh, Dungeons and Dragons doesn't allow you to do a lot of narrative and character development when, you know, freaking Dimension 20 is sitting out there being like, hello. So I think it depends a lot on what the players want and what the GM wants. And it can be very difficult to find that group that meshes in that way. So I think that having a more simple mechanical setup, you fill that in yourself with the narrative. That's really, you're not going to fill it in with anything else. You're not going to fill it in with more mechanics. So it does really lend to a more narrative flow, as opposed to just turning it into a board game where it's about min-maxing, etc.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, this is something actually that I've thought about a lot, because I suffer from sunk cost fallacy in that I own a lot of role-playing games, and then I'm just playing Ironsword, and it's like, so I've tried to solo other games, and my conclusion is the following. Any game can be played solo or GM-less, but some games are designed in such a way that they're made easier to be played that way. So, do complex, crunchy games make it harder? Well, I'd say two things. One, because they're not designed to be played GM-less, or the question was narrative. I don't know if narrative in this sense means this, but I'll answer this question. Maybe Benjamin, you can tell us exactly what you mean by narrative. But since the system isn't designed for that, most systems, at least when we're talking about traditional crunchy games, they're designed that they put a lot of weight on the GM. The GM has to make a lot of decisions, a lot of work behind the scenes. So when you don't have a system helping you, like Ironsworn, you don't have these mechanics guiding you and giving you structure, it gets harder. You have to do more of the heavy lifting. And the other point would be that it's harder to improvise things when you need to come up with stat blocks for something on the run. You know, oh, I encountered this monster. I don't have the stat block for this monster. I need to stop everything and get the stat block for this monster because otherwise I cannot run this part of the game. And that kind of thing can slow down the type of game.
Really good point. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. As in prioritizing story rather than simulation. So we're not talking specifically about... that's an interesting question. Okay, what I'm basically answering. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, complex systems do make it harder, but if you do have system mastery and you can improvise things, like I said, I've run Mithras, played solo, and it's worked wonderfully, and I told this, and it was very short, but I played this like really interesting adventure because I just kind of like improvised things. I was like, okay, yeah, this monster has a 30% in this skill and this much health. It doesn't matter, you know, I'm not gonna. So if you have system mastery, it's no big deal. But yeah, and that's after a year of playing Ironsworn, where I've internalized the structure of Ironsworn. I've internalized the game loop, so I can do that by myself. I'm like, oh, let me do a perception roll. But what I'm actually doing is gathering information. I'm gathering information. You know, I'm using the Ironsworn move. Anyway, let's get back.
For me, it was the opposite because I was more familiar with D&D, and I was like, I want to just be able to do a perception roll.
And the final question before we dive deep into your book is, what drove us to do creative stuff with Ironsworn?
For me, it was accidental. I was just playing, and because I have this very long background of writing and being pretty practiced in like ebb and flow of drama, that I just sort of did it naturally in the story. And then at some point I was continuing along with my adventure and looked back and went, how did this turn into a 3-act novel? How did this curve become perfect? So I just decided that I was going to polish it up a little bit and see if anybody wanted it. And that was a complete lie to myself because I ended up putting a ton of work into it and creating this whole novel. And then I ended up self-publishing it rather than going with what's a traditional publishing, which is honestly... I don't necessarily recommend going that route when self-publishing is as easy and amazing as it is nowadays.
That's awesome. That's good to know. I know nothing of it, so I will take your word.
What about you?
Oh, well, in my case, I did notice one tiny factor that I had when playing solo versus playing GMless is this feeling that you're left with, oh my god, this story is amazing and no one knows about it and I hate it. You know?
Yes.
That's like the most horrible part of playing solo, right? Like, for example, the solo adventure that I just told you that I played in Mithras, as soon as my wife got home, I had to tell her about it. I was like, oh my god, you have no idea the story I just played. It had this happen, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. Now I'm in prison, and it's so crazy. And it's just such a horrible feeling having, like, it's this it's not horrible, but it's just this weird thing that there's this piece of knowledge that exists, this story that exists only in your head and nowhere else, and will die with you. And it's just
stop describing what it's like to be a failing writer.
sorry, that hit too close.
Oh, no. It's just 99% of my work.
let me just wait. I need to change the music. I'm gonna put sorrow. Here we go. Sorrow bittersweet. There we go. We've got some sad music in the background.
Oh, I must lament my writing. So few people know about it. How will I go on?
No, so that was actually one of the reasons. It really felt like I wanted a strong. I really wanted to share it, because I felt the games that I'm running are fun, are interesting, and I really just wanted to share it with other people. And well, I decided to go all in because I've done other enterprises before, but I've always only like dipped my toes in. I've never fully dived deep. So I said, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all in and buy this cheap webcam and, and this decent microphone and try it all out. And here we are. And yeah. I don't know. I guess I did have my phases of trying to write, but writing gives me the most horrible anxiety, and I just never enjoy the process at all. And no matter how many times I tried, I didn't enjoy the process. I said, okay, no, this isn't for me. I've done comedy, I've done stand-up comedy, I've done theater before, so I said, wait. Why don't I just live stream it? Why don't I just live? And I think one of the biggest challenges for me, one of the biggest fears was I can't edit anything. So it has to be interesting all the time. I have to continuously be interesting. And fortunately, I am a very interesting person, so that worked out great.
That's why I like doing the novel. So much editing. But also, I feel you with that because, like, the joke that nobody ever laughs at is, okay, back to the editing mines. Because it's a grind often, and I get it. If you're not enjoying writing, get out, because it's so time-consuming, and it's so hard, and then you have this story that nobody cares about.
Let me put the volume up on the sorrow music. Now, I definitely hate editing, and I definitely don't have the time for it, which is why I live stream. Like, laziness is my primary motivator. Laziness is the reason why I do. It's like, I have to excel at this because I am terribly lazy, and I will not edit a single minute of my work. But yeah, okay, let's move on and start talking. Wait, let's take off the sorrow music, and let's go back.
No, more sorrow. we're going into the novel talk. Like,
let's go back to our peaceful music. That's loud. There we go. Oh, that's one of the things that I decided I will do after, like, the first episode of this live stream. I was like super nervous, and I was like, oh my god, everything has to be perfect. I have to do everything behind the scenes, everything. And now I'm much more relaxed, and I'm like, I'm just gonna lower the volume over here. Just it's made things easier. All right, so let's start talking about your book. So the first question on my list is, wait, how's your character's name pronounced again? Proclass? Proclass? Proclass. Excellent. So did Proclass die in session 2, and have you been lying to us all this time? Is it all a dream? Did you fudge that roll? These are the questions that my viewers are asking me.
Oh, I wonder how many people actually do wonder that. So what was going on there was I was trying desperately to get an inciting incident. I had gone on for so long. I actually was hoping that the Harrow Spider, the Empress battle, was going to go terribly, terribly wrong so that I could use that as my inciting incident. I originally thought that Kinzura was going to become a companion and come along with all the adventure, and then everything went right. And I was like, okay, face death, bitch. And then it's like, I'm here. It's fine. And so I carried on, and then bear. Then a bear happened, and I got my inciting incident.
I love it. I love it. All right. So, would you like to tell us about your background in writing?
So my background in writing is a bit silly, I guess. My sister told me, oh yeah, you have 27 years experience writing. And I'm like, I'm 33. So, but in a way, she's right that my first short story, I went to my mom and I'm like, I want to do what the first graders are doing, because they were writing children's books. But I don't know how to read or write because I'm highly dyslexic and I didn't learn to read or write until I was 7. So I dictated my first book, and just through growing up into adulthood, I kept writing, I kept at it, I kept improving, I kept wanting to work at it and wanting to get better at it, and it went from a hobby to a dream to now a part-time job. So yeah, there was a lot of really great milestones. Like the first time I won a contest, it was a citywide writing contest. First time I was technically published was a children's anthology of poetry, and I worked a while for the newspaper, the main newspaper of my hometown, for the teen section. And then I just started writing my own stuff. I wrote a really, really, really shitty novel and self-published it and got like $50 from that, which was the same prize money as that contest I won as a kid. So I was like, great, this is a wonderful dream.
That's awesome.
But now I kept at it, and this, I checked, and I have 61 downloads as of today. That's amazing to me.
That's awesome. I love it. That's really nice. We have a message from Nuke saying, I only now found about this channel despite searching Ironsworn trillion times in YouTube. You really have to add the keyword to the playthrough videos. Cheers from Germany. I really do have to add the Ironsworn. I am not tech savvy at all. Despite being a programmer for my day job. No wonder no one's watching this. That's the reason.
Well, wait, you told me we had 5,000 viewers.
I'm breaking up. Thank you, Duke. Thank you. Okay, so let's go into the next question. How is your process? Do you play and take notes, or do you write as you're playing, or are you just lying to us and making it all up?
Yeah, I actually I went into the backyard and dug a hole and found this book. So I started out just writing it on Discord because it was easy. So I use the Oracle bot, and I take my little notes with that, like, oh, at this point, like my spirit is 3 out of 5. And then I write the narrative, just type it out into Discord, and do the rolls, let the Oracle bot tell me all that. Then I literally copy-paste from Discord into a word processor. And Discord does not like that. Discord is like, I'm sorry, you scrolled too fast, so I decided you didn't need this entire chapter 2. Chapter 2 what? So that is, I think that's a sunk cost fallacy for me there. I'm like, no, I'm going to continue using Discord. But then I can use the word processor to clean it up a bit, take out all the images, and very much reduce it to what would be more of a written play report. And then that is basically my rough draft. And from there, I start, going through it and making the narrative better, because rough draft, I'm gonna reread it and be like, oh, there's like no description of this, of where they are right now, or oh, I used the word panther 7 times in 3 sentences. And then mixing where I actually want the roles in with the narrative, because I use the roles to increase the suspense, and it is supposed to support the narrative in a way that makes the reader go, oh, the author doesn't have full control over this. What would happen if this role went bad? And that's not how you play a play report necessarily is. You get the role out there and then you think about, okay, what does this mean? But I really want to position it in a way that makes the reader go, what does this mean?
I noticed that. I was wondering, I had forgotten to ask that as a question, but I did notice that, and it certainly does work. It certainly has that effect where I start reading and I immediately want to scroll down because I need to know the result of those dice. You cannot be telling me what is happening without knowing the dice roll. That is just torture.
I worry about that, because that's a very unique process that is like nobody really... I don't know if anybody else is doing this. I'm sure I can't be the only one, but it is not something that you traditionally practice as a writer. So finding that middle ground, I was like, oh crap, I want to use the roles to increase the tension, but I don't want people to scroll down and skip and be like, wait, I have to flip to the last page to see how it ends.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that having the roles there instead of like a reference at the end was definitely, much better. But
for sure.
And it certainly does feel like a little bit like, it reminds me of like those moments when you're reading a book and a character gets like, I remember this happened in, I can't remember the book, but a character, like the chapter ends with a character getting hit in the head with an axe or something like that. And then it's like, I need to skip a few chapters to see if this character is still alive. I'm not gonna wait. I need to know. So it reminded me of that.
The writer was skipping between characters and making you wait a chapter to find out if the character... Yes. Oh, no. That would drive me insane.
I think this was Game of Thrones, which switches between different characters. And it reminded me of that, like I see the result and it's like, no, I need to know the role. Don't start telling me what happened. But I kept my control and read through the text as
feedback. I'll keep that in mind.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Do you edit the game after the fact and alter how things actually happen in the game? Or do you keep it like exactly as it happened?
Well, so we're talking editing versus retcon. So that is a complicated question, because a little bit of yes, a little bit of no. So I do not change how the roles go and how they affect the story. That is absolutely against the point of these stories. But you just can't play a full game of any role-playing game without later going, oh crap, I forgot that I could have added this stat. I have a +1 here. Or, oh, I miscounted my momentum. So I did go back, and when I saw those situations, I was like, okay, so if I forgot to add my +1, if I had added that, it would have turned this miss into a weak hit, but I already played it as a miss, so instead I am actually going to edit the Oracle and say, no, she beat me. Yeah, definitely. That was definitely a miss, which kind of adds a little bit to at the very end, you look at my stats and see my roll stats and see that it was just, I got like the Oracle seems to hate me. But at least a few of those was the fact that I had to make her win more because I had forgotten to add a stat. So that's very important to me, is keeping the integrity of the story and how the dice affect the story. And there were times where I'm like, I really should have made my character endure harm, or not endure harm, endure stress at that moment, that this part of the story is so stressful, it really should have been mechanically represented. And then there's the other side of it where I finish the whole story and I look at it and go, oh, there's a theme here. I didn't actually, the theme wasn't Unspoken Vow when I was playing it. I was just playing. So I finished it and went back and went, okay, there's this theme of Proclass made this vow to the moon, but he didn't have to say it out loud. Proclass made a vow to Sutahe, but she wouldn't know if he fulfilled that vow or not. And then the unspoken vow is both, where he doesn't tell anyone and no one would know if he fulfilled it or not. So, hence that theme. And I was able to go back through and strengthen that theme without really changing anything that was, rules or roles. So a good example might be that, and I don't know if you've finished the story, so this might be
not yet, but it's okay, it's okay. We talked about this in the chat, that spoilers, for me at least, don't ruin the story.
So the point where he is sort of just talking to himself, but as if he were talking to Sutahe, I originally wrote that as him thanking her. Oh, it's a good thing you made me make that vow, because as terrible as things went, if things had gone even worse, then I would have been undone. And it just bugged me throughout every single draft, that at the very, very end, I was like, no, I can't do this. What am I doing? I'm preserving Sutahe's infallibility. That's not necessarily that's not necessary. So I did change it to how I really felt and how I think Proclass would really feel. That vow fucked shit up. And everything went wrong. So, and if you go back and look at the rolls, if he had had a +1 to iron through a lot of that, it would not have gone as bad. And so I had Proclass instead say to himself, I don't think you understand that this isn't a curse. This is who I am. This is what makes me me. And it was sort of this moment of forgiveness for him. And I think that when it then goes into what I did mechanically do next, it actually makes it more powerful, because the very next thing he does is transform into a crane and get his +1 heart. And the very next thing he does with that is to try to forge another bond. So this bond that required something of him that ended up being terrible, he wasn't going to let that stop him from forging new bonds. So in a way, what had happened with the just sort of improv of the story, I was able to change that and strengthen that. So whether that's editing or retcon is kind of besides the point, because it mechanically didn't make a difference. But I think it really strengthened the story regardless.
Excellent. Excellent. That's awesome. We have another question from Benjamin. Don't want to come off as an ivory tower wanker, but have you read Cybertext by, I do not know how to pronounce that, Seth? If so, did this influence your writing praxis in this project?
Oh, no, I've not even heard of it.
Okay. Well, there's your answer.
Is that, well, I guess, is that something that is either similar to style, or is it that they did the same thing with the roles? Because I'm really curious to find any other books, because I was really surprised that I was the first one to do this with Ironsworn, because it just lends itself so well.
Yeah.
But I think most people are like, yeah, here's my play report. That's enough. I don't need to, rewrite my character's relationship with someone they made a vow to how many pages ago.
All right.
So
then.
yeah, that's really interesting.
All right, let's see what Benjamin says. Okay, next question. Well, on point. Influences for writing the book.
So obviously Animorphs.
Obviously.
I was a huge Animorphs fan as a kid. I wasn't into the Harry Potter scene, and I really liked the idea of being able to have the abilities of an animal and the skills to be able to do things that a human just can't do, jump real high, fly, etc. And of course, battle morphs. So Animorphs is a very battle-heavy story, and it's just constant action. And then also, I'm very much into video games. So put those two together, you get very action content, action-heavy narrative from me. As one person put it, Proclass gets turned into raw hamburger every 4 pages. So, one of the big influences is also the entire Zelda series. I started really trying to write a novel based on Ocarina of Time. And I've just continued to play Zelda, and this story specifically is a little bit influenced by Breath of the Wild in just having this like long drawn out adventure where you're just carrying whatever you've got on your back. Of course, Proclass doesn't have mallet space like Link does, but so narrative-heavy video games tend to be a big influence on me. So Zelda, another big influence was Darkest Dungeon, which apparently Sean has never played, even though Delve is basically Darkest Dungeon. And that blew my mind. But yes, Darkest Dungeon is a huge influence on the second book. Yeah, pretty much just forever playing video games and consuming, writing through games as opposed to just reading all the books I can get my hands on. I tend to really enjoy video games that have an unfolding plot.
Excellent. I love it. Benjamin expands on his question saying, again, I don't know if this pronunciation is correct, Seth is a theorist. In 96, he wrote about literature and its relationship to emerging technologies. So, he tells a little bit more about that, and I guess if you're interested later, you can ask Benjamin about it. He's going into a lot of detail that's very technical for me as a non-writer, as a person that barely writes. But yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hey,
Benjamin, if you're...
Yeah. No, basically, he's saying a key to Ars's work was the idea of ergodic literature, literature which requires non-trivial effort to engage with. He was leaning mostly on muds and mucks at the time, but it meshes very well with the work you're doing as radical fiction.
Very interesting. I'm going to have to take a look at that. And Benjamin, if you're on the Ironsworn Discord, I'm going to take a look at the full context of your question and see if I can't put a more in-depth answer there. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Let's meet up on the Discord and chat.
All right. Next up, representation in the book.
Yes. Very, very important to me. So, when I started really learning a lot about feminism, I wanted to start representing in my stories my just opinions about what it's like to be a woman and what it's like to go through a lot of the issues that come up because of sexism. And so there's also an intersection there with gender identity, feminism and gender identity, and the intersection of feminism and sexual identity. So, for example, Proclass is bisexual. And I wanted that in there because there's not a whole lot of bisexual representation, and I'm bisexual. So I really was like, okay, I mean, somebody's got to do it. So I decided to write that into the story and really put what it means to me. And what it means to me is that it's just part of who you are, and really more important is the demonstrations of consent that get put in there. So really, another part of it was that I just wanted Proclass to fuck around a lot. But in the first book, there is a non-binary character.
Oh, awesome.
I didn't tag it as LGBTQ+, because I feel like the character is just there and happens to be non-binary. Like, they have a really important role in the story, but that's about it. But gender issues are actually brought up more in the second book, and then the third book is almost completely about it's like, I'm just gonna have to put a huge warning on it in the beginning of this book is basically about rape culture.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, how people treat women when they are being stalked, and a man just won't leave them alone. And there is no rape in the story, thankfully. But that is basically Proclass's job. He becomes this woman's bodyguard, and the way that goes about. And then there's also the question of how society treats homosexuality. So I wanted to use elves and humans as a metaphor for race, and I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of representation that was both useful and coincidental. And I want to keep going in that direction.
That's awesome.
Don't know how I could just keep going and going. I'll stop there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You reminded me of one of the things you were saying. Reminded me of one of my favorite tweets of all time, which is someone was basically saying, "Why are all my D&D characters gay? Well, I didn't spend 30 years of my life pretending to be straight to go on pretending to be a straight elf.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And I love that. All right, so you have a homebrew asset, is that correct?
Yes, technically, yes. So, I tweaked bind, but it's like just barely a step away from being Animorphs in the first place. So bind, where you're supposed to take an animal pelt and dance in the moonlight and empower yourself with the power of that animal. Instead, Proclass communes with the moon and uses the power she gives him to transform. And it is... I made it a little more strict because it was fun. So Proclass doesn't have a choice. He has to commune with the moon if he's not already empowered. But he can choose when to activate which power at any time, which is sort of a give or take. He doesn't have to choose at night which stat bonus he's going to get. Which in some ways has actually recently lent to him not transforming that much, because I'm like, I gotta hold on to it for later. What if I really need it later? So I'm not committing to the stat bonus.
The video game health potion conundrum.
Yes. Yes.
All right, that's awesome. Yeah, because I was reading it and I started seeing this and I was like, wait a second, I don't recognize this asset. This is something new, and
yeah.
I really liked it.
I don't introduce it at the very beginning because I didn't want people who aren't familiar with Ironsworn or not familiar with role-playing games in general to look at and go like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? So the first time it's introduced, it is actually just a little blurb underneath it that is unique to Proclass, which is my euphemism for homebrew.
Oh, I thought what it meant is that no one else can use this. Like,
I mean, it's the same as I mean, you can steal it for your own game. Please do. The copyright I have is that you can, take any of the ideas from this and make your own thing from it. So,
that's awesome.
If anybody makes fanfic, please send it to me. If anybody makes fan art, please send it to me.
You've heard her, internet. Furries, this is your time to shine. You have been training for this moment your entire lives.
I have created Proclass for you. You're welcome.
All right, our time is almost up, and we're reaching the end anyway, so because everything is perfectly planned. Nothing is improvised.
You're incredibly organized.
All right, so let's go into our little outro. So what are your plans for future books? You already told us a little bit about them. Anything else you want to add?
Well, no. I planned... I plan to write them until I'm done. Like, there isn't an end or a planned end. This is, I've got my epic vow that is really more one that is probably never going to be achieved. So it's just going to go on until I get bored of it and stop. So, follow my itch.io page and you'll get a novel every...
Yeah, you don't want to commit to something on the internet That is not good. I do not recommend it.
The first novel I whipped together pretty fast, and the second novel's much longer, so I don't know how long it's going to take me to put it together. And also, I didn't have any test readers for the first one, and I've already had a few people volunteer as test readers for the second, which is very valuable. So
that's awesome. Well, that's great to hear. So, on that note, the itch link is down below in the description of the video, as is your Twitter and the Drive-Thru Fiction link as well. And while looking at that, I noticed that we got Ironhome, the channel, got 4 more subscribers, and we've passed the 100 subscribers mark.
Congratulations!
That's awesome.
Aww. Now I want to go see if my analytics have gone up at all. Let's see. No. I've had 6 views today.
It went down.
Well, everybody, go look at it. Just give me that little bit of boost.
All right, you heard it, people. As soon as you're done with this video, go click that link. Open up private windows and click as well. Just like write up a little Python script that just every 5 minutes opens.
Wait, I'm trying to remember. I feel like my friends tried this, and I can't remember if it worked or not.
I imagine it probably didn't work. But anyway. All right, so that is our very special episode for today. Thank you so much for coming on here. This has been...
So much for having me.
No, this has been so much fun. It has been a pleasure. And on that note, I need to stop saying on that note, but it's like the first time I get to say it, so I'm just going to keep saying on that note. We have next weekend at the same time, we're going to have another special episode where me and Margot are going to be playing a one-shot of Mouse Guard using the Ironsworn system.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be really fun. I'm going to have 1 week to reconfigure everything in Foundry to be able to play it a Mouse Guard, but it's not that much. It's changing Ironborn to Mouse. Changing the names of the locations and adding a bunch of animals instead of scary monsters and so forth. But yeah,
I once fought a snake in Mouse Guard. It is terrifying.
But yeah, that's our episode. Thanks everyone who watched live, and well, anyone who isn't watching it live. And that's about it. I don't know if you want to add anything before I just awkwardly turn off click the button and turn everything off.
No, just thank you so much. This has been amazing. So much fun. I really appreciate all the work you put into this as well.
Thank you. It's been great. It's really been great. So thank you too. All right. We are going to click the button now. So goodbye, everyone.